put yourself in this scenario. The year is 2009 and you are Wolfgang, the CEO of Bauer and Vogelmann AG, an industrial quarry machinery company based in Bavaria. Every minute you're late to a meeting, an important business meeting in Berlin, it costs your company thousands of euros. And quite honestly, you are kind of bored of your tired old S-Class, which you usually sit in the back of. And at heart, you are an engineer. As I say, the year is 2009, and fortunately Audi have you covered because the third generation of the Audi A8 has just been released, and it's sticking to its true form of all aluminium construction, both chassis and body. And of course, it's got permanent Quattro four-wheel drive, and it'll do 155 miles an hour on the Autobahn all day long. So you have your PA order you want immediately, and of course you go for the 3-litre turbo diesel V6 because that is the eco-friendly option. Again, remember it's 2009 and diesel. That's the eco one. So Wolfgang takes delivery of his Audi A8. Well, he doesn't personally take delivery, somebody just hands him the keys and it's outside. But the question is, did Wolfgang the engineer make the right choice? I think Wolfgang initially, he'd be very impressed with this car because I know JJ is. You can tell that this car is the flagship. The A8 was the best car that Audi made. It was right up at the top to compete with cars like the S-Class, the Jaguar XJ, the BMW 7 Series. So it had some really great rivals, and of course this car was not cheap to buy. It's a very expensive luxury car, and that's why Wolfgang would be buying it, not his workers. As an engineer, he'd enjoy the way this interior has been designed because it's almost yacht-like in its design. The way that the doors swoop into the main part of the dashboard, it's covered in things like wood, metal, and various other materials, and it looks premium, it feels premium. Audi have been on the top of the game with interiors since this era. He'd also enjoy this nautical themed gear knob here, which is kind of like selecting the speed in a boat rather than a car. He's guaranteed four-wheel drive with this car, the Quattro four-wheel drive system, which is a 60-40 split, 60 to the front, 40 to the back, although that can vary depending on what you're doing. And a nice, smooth 8-speed automatic gearbox and a lightweight aluminium construction. Now that's what's important about aluminium. It's not that it's some fancy material or whatever, it's just that it's light. And that means that this car weighs 1,800 kilos, whereas its rivals in the S-Class and 7 Series are both over 2 tons. It's lighter, it's more nimble, despite being a big car. It's styled very conservatively, isn't it? I think if you're someone who just wants to get where you're going in luxury style and fast, the style of this car is okay. I think Wolfgang would like it, but if you see one of these, it just looks like an Audi A4, which is like 2 levels down, because they're kind of like cookie cutter styling. You've got the A4, the A6 and the A8, and they all have this very similar shape. And without any frame of reference to notice how big this car is, because of course it's over 5 meters long, it's a big car, you'd probably struggle to actually recognise it as an A8. But as we know, it's not all about being seen in a expensive car, is it? Sometimes you just want to fly under the radar. But what it does have is that enormous grille on the front. Again, one of the early Audis to have that, and that is the get out of the way on the Autobahn grille, isn't it? It shows up in your mirror miles back and you're like, oh, okay, I can see this Audi coming, I better just pull over as it goes past at 155 miles an hour. Like the Mercedes S-Class, the A8 has always been at the forefront of technology. Available was pretty much everything that you could get in 2009 on a car, be it things like night vision, collision detection systems, GPS that's linked to the rest of the car so it knows what's ahead and it knows how to adjust certain settings of the car depending on what features of the road are coming up ahead, the lighting and so on. Adaptive LED lighting, the object detection and heads-up display, and of course it's got an infotainment screen which is not touchscreen, it's controlled by the scrolly wheel as is all German cars of this era. But the very best part about this infotainment screen is that with the touch of a button it can go away, and I think that means that this car, with that screen away, it's aging really well on the interior because there's no obvious technology to sort of show its age. Now the screen of course is perfectly good. It's got things like radio, sat-nav, navigation, old-fashioned navigation from 2009, not the best. I really like how they've designed these various things, like the hazard button, which is on this like metal panel here next to the analog clock, because as we know, all luxury cars have to have an analog clock. You've got the knurled dials with blue and red around them for controlling the climate control, whether you want it hot or cold, and a lovely set of dials in front. And they're a bit of a mixture between like a modern digital dashboard, because a central screen does take up a large amount of the the whole thing, and then some proper traditional dials as well. So a nice blend, and of course you can display all various bits of information in that central dial, including your navigation. Now again, the navigation system's a bit old, so I probably wouldn't bother with that. You can scroll through it all with the steering wheel controls as well. You've got a little touchpad set of numbers here which light up, and I didn't really understand what that was, but it's selecting the radio stations by the looks of it. Now the radio in this car, it seems to always want to be on. I don't know if that's just this particular car, but I think that would irritate Wolfgang, because he wouldn't want the radio on, he wouldn't want the German equivalent of Radio 1 on. He'd want to just listen to that V6 diesel and think about the day ahead. But every time you turn this car on or do anything with that infotainment system, it seems to just turn the radio on. There are two cup holders which easily fit the fat bottom bottle, and door pockets which again fit the fat bottom bottle, and they're lined with carpet. They're really nice. There's a little cubby hole inside the armrest on both sides, which is really cool. I've never seen that in any car. It's dead space for a lot of manufacturers, so the fact that you can store things in there is ace. You've got a sunglasses holder up top. You've got a split centre armrest, which means that you can carry on using your armrest while your passenger fills the centre console with various bits of junk, or vice versa. And the glove box, which of course is a good size, it's a big car, is the most damped thing ever, and to the point where it's actually too damped and it takes absolutely ages to open unless you help it along, which you don't want to do, because obviously the whole point is that this car does everything for you. But yeah, you'll be pleased to hear that it is a practical car. Now, it's quite common in luxury executive saloons like this car that you'll want to be chauffeured around and sat in the back and have a driver do all the work. So it's important that we find out what it's like in the back. So for that, we're going to ask backseat JJ, what do you think of the back of the A8, mate? Oh yeah, this is my kind of car. Thank you, mate, for borrowing something good for once. It's a limousine, isn't it? I've got loads of room. I've got all this leg room here, and I've got enough headroom. It could be better, but then of course you could get the A8L, which is the long wheelbase version of this car, and that gives you more room. Back here I've got the world's most enormous armrest. I think it's trying to make up for something here, this armrest, I don't know. But you've got cup holders there, which are not even part of the part where you actually rest your arm on it. You actually can't fold these seats down, although there is a through-loading hatch for your skis, because obviously Wolfgang, whoever that is by the way, who's Wolfgang? Well, he's a fictional character used to create a narrative and story arc for the video and to keep people interested. He needs his skis in here, doesn't he? Down here in the center console, I've got two 12-volt sockets. Now, it's not advanced like some modern car where you got USBs and screens and things and you can plug your iPhones in, but the fact that there's two 12-volt sockets there means that you could have two executives in the back with their laptops typing away. I've got ashtray, because this is maybe the last of a generation of cars where they thought about people needing to smoke. Obviously now smoking is bad and you must vape all the time. Of course, an adjustable headrest so that I don't get whiplash. The first aid kit, some tiny little door pockets, and no pockets on the back of the seats. But then, you know, this isn't a family car. This is a businessman's car, although I would maybe like to put my important documents in there. You've got this sort of like ambient lighting running down the central part of the car. I've got a little light up here, which is very nice. Some good grab handles. And if you owe a lot of people a lot of money, like I do, you might want to opt for the Audi A8 security version, which had bulletproof glass and the ability to withstand a hand grenade, as well as oxygen supplies, like you're on a plane, and pyrotechnics in the doors, which could blow the doors off were you in need of quick escape. And yeah, that's the back of the Audi A8, so back to you, JJ. All right, cheers, pal. Thank you. So that air suspension, in theory, makes this car very comfortable, because obviously the air ride is there to soak up the bumps of the road, but I don't know if it's just the fact that this car's got 21-inch wheels on it, but the ride is not the smoothest. It is good, but given that it's an air ride, you would expect it to be better. So it has got a sort of firmness to it that's unexpected, and you can definitely tell that the edge is taken away, and that without it would be a lot worse. The noise intrusion into the cabin at speed was difficult for me to test, as there was some resonance, I think, from the tyres coming in. I think with a new set of tyres it would be fixed. However, something I can really tell you is impressive is the double glazed windows. As I drove home on the day of filming in my basic old single glazed car, I was very much aware of the noise of the passing traffic. So this is the V6 diesel 3 litre, and it has an insane amount of torque. A 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds, which, to put it into context, I used to own a WRX Impreza, which was the sort of rapid rally machine of the day, and that did 0 to 60 in 5.9 seconds, the same as this car. Only this car is going to get you sort of mid-40s MPG, sip the fuel while it accelerates like a beast. I mean, probably not at the same time. And that is why 85% of these cars sold were the diesel. But there was also petrol versions. You could get a 3-litre turbo TFSI petrol engine or a 4.2 litre V8 in petrol or diesel flavour, depending on which one you want. And then, if that wasn't enough, in the long wheelbase version they did a W12, a 6.3 litre W12 engine, which, I mean, it's probably completely unnecessary, but then, you know, when you buy a car like this, a lot of it is, isn't it? You can't hear the engine either, like, apart from when you're just tootling around town and you can just hear that edge of a diesel noise. It's otherwise just completely silent until you absolutely floor it. And then, of course, it's got a slightly sonorous sounding V6 noise to it. So normally with a luxury saloon car, you probably wouldn't even bother asking how does it handle. As long as it can go around a corner and it doesn't kill you, then that's fine, isn't it? That's what you would expect of an S-Class or a Lexus LS. But because this car is lighter, because it's got Quattro four-wheel drive, maybe it does handle well. Well, yes and no. I think it's really impressive. It feels like an A to B car. It'll be really, really fast. Like, it grips ridiculously well. You can go around corners a lot faster than you might think. So in that sense, it is a good handling car, but what it doesn't have is really any feedback whatsoever. It's not like a car that's enjoyable to drive. So although you can get around these twisty roads very, very quickly, I don't think it's a car that I would wake up in the morning and think, oh, I can't wait to take the A8 out for a blast around the twisty roads. But it is kind of hilarious how well it just holds on. You know, it's got big wide tyres, four-wheel drive. It's probably one of those cars that you don't really want to find out what the limit is, because as soon as you do, you'll be off the road and in a ditch. When you're looking at a luxury car this age, you want to know whether they're going to be reliable or not, don't you? Well, I can't really tell you that. I mean, this car is now 10 years old and it will really depend on service history, and this generation of A8 is up to 15 years old now, and of course it will depend on how well the car has been looked after, as well as how many bits of kit it's got on it that can go wrong. This A8 doesn't have that much tech on it, so there's less to go wrong. It's been reliable to its owner, James. He's not really had any issues with it. But there's a complex air ride suspension, which is going to cost you a lot of money if that goes wrong, and you know, they're now at that age where that may be the case, that you'll be forking out for repairs on that. It's one of them where it could be a well-built, robust car, but eventually stuff's going to break, and when it does, you're going to need to make sure that you've got a rainy day fund to repair it. If you buy the best one you can initially, then you're going to limit your chances of those things going wrong. Just don't buy a cheap one. Don't do what all the YouTubers do and go, I bought a cheap Audi A8, because that is a recipe for bankruptcy, isn't it? It does make me feel good, this car. I feel like I've made it. It definitely has that feeling of you've done well for yourself. If you're driving this A8, especially if the year was 2009, which it isn't, it's 2024, and I'm just driving this for a YouTube video. But, you know, as I park it up and walk away from it, I feel I'd be proud to own it. Maybe not everyone would even know what it was, and they just think it's an Audi A4, but to use that horrible phrase, it's a nice place to be, well, it really does work for this Audi. So the lease is up on the A8 and Wolfgang is going to hand it back. The question is, does he get another one, or does he go back to an S-Class? I'm not sure on that one. I think in some ways you might well hold on to the idea of an A8 and keep it, because they do make you feel cool. They are quite a special feeling car, you know, with its very, very impressive interior. Decent technology behind it, hasn't it, with its aluminium space frame and four-wheel drive. So therefore it's a little bit more efficient. It's more fun to drive, albeit not like a sports car or anything, but it doesn't have that full-on luxury feel that you might get from an S-Class or a Lexus LS, because the suspension is just that little bit too firm. Depending on what you want, I think you can make your choice there. Big thanks to James for lending me this car. If you want to see your car on this channel, please do get in touch at the email on the screen now. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.